All right, so we've got quorum, so we'll call this meeting of the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability to order at 6 p.m. And we'll call the roll. Tara Ditterdale.
Here.
Justin Vassell, I'm here. Matt Austin.
Present.
Sierra Rose. Not online, I don't think. Not here. John Eldon.
Here.
Dave Rollo. Quentin Gilly. Hunter Hawley.
Here.
Jamie Scholl. Evan Nix.
Here.
And Shanghai Shu. Alrighty, so yeah, I think a couple people will probably trickle in within the next few minutes and maybe jump on online. Great, okay, so we'll move to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve these. Oh, second.
And there's a second, okay. Any debate? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, the agenda is approved. So we have approval of the minutes next, but we don't have the minutes quite ready yet. I don't think Zero is probably going to make it tonight. He was feeling a little under the weather, and I know he's had some technical issues recently, so he wasn't able to get the minutes ready quite yet, but should have them ready to go for next time. So that brings us to public comment. 3 minutes per person for a total of 10 minutes. Are there any members of the public in here or online that would like to address the commission?
Don't anybody raise their hand at once.
That's right.
We're a popular
place.
Can I ask a point? I take the minutes, right, because Zero's not here.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
would you mind doing that?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I want to make sure.
Okay, perfect. Not seeing any public comment. That brings us to report from commissioners. So the chair's report is up first. I can jump on and screen. Oh, there we go. So we're on chair report. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, I like the new putting a timestamp for everyone.
Yeah, trying that out. Just largely for myself, to keep myself on track.
Well, it's hard to follow, but at least it's there.
Yeah, right. We'll see how it goes. Okay, great. So the upcoming tentative calendar, pretty standard. We were meant to have a work session between this last meeting and this one, and I had things come up in my own schedule that didn't work very well for that. And then also at the same time, I did try to actually book a room at the library, and they were all booked up. So going to try to get on top of that this time. I'll probably book that tonight for 2 weeks from now. I think we'll have stuff to work on at that point, so I think it'll be worth doing.
That's Earth Day.
And it's actually Earth Day. Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, it's appropriate. Perfect. We'll move on to the org chart there. Not a whole lot new since the last time, except for we've got the updated executive committee positions filled in there. And we've currently got 3 vacancies.
While we're on this,
Yeah.
we had talked at one point, I don't think it got very far, I don't know how much influence we have on this, but would it make sense, and if so, could we actually do it, to have like a IU student position? I think they bring a lot of energy and a lot of potential networking. Is that something we have the power to add? If so, where would it go? Could we just kind of recommend somebody to the mayor? But would that make sense as like a standard representative along with Quentin representing IU sustainability?
Yeah, I would have to look at the municipal code and remind myself what the rules are for that. It's possible that we certainly can't change any of these positions that are up here, but it's possible that maybe we can add to it. So
I mean, I could just
possibility.
suggest students apply for the vacant one
They
and we
can
do it that
apply.
way, but yeah.
They're city residents.
What's that?
They're city residents. I mean,
But
Yeah.
There's none to apply for because the mayoral appointments you can't apply for unless.
Okay. Could we appeal to the mayor?
Yes.
Well, you still apply
to
the
say,
normal
could we make
way.
one of
Yes.
these?
it's the same
Yeah.
application
Yeah.
form for all seats, I think.
Okay.
Mhm.
And the city clerk directs them to either the council or the mayor, or in the case of the county one,
Okay.
the county commissioners. They don't have a separate application
A few
form.
people that I talked to, I don't know about you, Hunter, but they said that they weren't, they didn't even necessarily apply. They were just said, here you go, would you like to do
Kind of
this?
selected.
Yeah.
I had to apply now.
Okay. Okay.
Same.
Okay. So maybe I haven't corrected that.
Okay.
Well, and
Yeah, it could have changed.
Evan applied through the council, but your seat is mayoral.
Yeah.
Or it's like applied through that same form.
Yeah.
The city clerk directs them.
I'm wrong,
to the-
you're probably right.
So yeah, so we can see if we have that power, but
Thing, which I'll bring up.
while we have vacancies, we'll try to fill those first. Cool.
Gotta get one that'll show up though, that's the key.
Yeah.
Then we gotta get that quorum.
Mhm. Yep, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah,
we don't want to make
adding-
it harder for ourselves.
Adding a seat does add to the
Yeah.
need for quorum.
Yeah, and I don't know if adding a seat or just dedicating a seat that currently exists. Yeah, and a lot of it might just be on me saying like, hey, this is an option, you all might wanna get involved, and I can just
Mhm.
kinda advertise it as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the best way to go about it.
Does that interest folks to have a kinda student, get some right in there. A student representative, either formally or informally?
I think that's a good
There's
idea.
Jamie in the waiting room there.
I think it'd be a good, yeah, I mean, I think having a student on here, you know, even if it's informally, it would be good. I think this would be a good experience for a lot of students. I think if you hung something, I think a lot of students don't even realize that this is a thing.
Mhm.
I surely, when I was in school, didn't realize that I would even be allowed to
Right.
apply for something like this, or participate in something like this, but, yeah, I think they would bring a lot of enthusiasm to it.
And we might already
We
technically
can ask
have.
Quentin when he
What's
gets
that?
here.
Sorry.
And
No, all good.
I have some suggestions for some outreach stuff for getting those seats filled for the birthday thing. So
Okay.
we can,
Quentin,
Yeah.
we were just looking at some vacant seats and discussing whether we should encourage IU students to apply, whether we can have kind of a semi-designated student seat, that's probably a lot harder, but whether we should try to get a little more IU representative from people half our age with more energy.
Yeah, well, I think, is it Xingwei is
Yeah.
one of the new, is
Okay, it's-
also IU
Okay.
as well.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But-
He's the sustainability officer for GPSG, Graduate Student Professional,
Okay,
Graduate and Professional Student Government.
Yeah,
okay.
but I think, yes, somebody, I think that would make sense, for sure.
Okay.
I think it's definitely good to have student perspectives and, especially folks that are wanting to get involved in some way. It never hurts to have
Mhm.
more people applying for these positions, right?
Yep.
The way in which those seats get filled, we have no control over. That's written into the code. But yeah, if you know people that might be interested, definitely encourage them.
yeah,
Yeah.
building kind of like community connections between the university and
We
the
could have more.
city is probably
But probably, well, and there's so many students.
in line with our priorities as an organization.
Right.
There's some opportunity there.
And then a lot of people, they'll live here while they're in school, a lot of them will live here a lot longer, even afterwards too, so.
Yeah.
And there's Ivy Tech as well, right, from the student side.
Good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else on org chart, recruitment stuff? Okay. Upcoming events, I'm sure there's some more that probably should have gone onto this slide, but I just put a couple up there. Obviously Earth Day, event at Switchyard Park coming up on the 19th, not the 22nd, as I had listed last time. And we'll maybe circle back around to that in just a minute or two. And then I don't know if everyone's like plugged into the email announcements for the Green Drinks like forum that happens, I think, once a month. But there's some cool talks that come to Upland Brewing Company at their wood shop every month. So if you're not on that email list already, it's worth Googling and getting onto it. And so this is what they've got coming up this month. It's all about birding, celebrating warblers. So I don't know anything about birding, so I might go try to learn something.
That's on my list to check one of those out, I just haven't had time yet, but yeah.
Yeah, and since I've got kind of a blank space up there, are there any other like events that people know of that are coming up this month that maybe folks should be aware of? Okay, cool. Well, if you learn of anything, shoot me an email or something. I'll try to keep this this list populated each time. Okay, general updates. So the annual report for 2024 We had talked about it a little bit before, that I was working on a draft for that. I've sort of got the first full draft ready to go and sent it around to folks. So we'll dive into that in a little more detail here in a few minutes. Bylaws reform is the other thing that we're going to be chatting about today. So we had sort of come up with a few steps last time to take on this. Step one is just identifying the parts of the bylaws that might need some work, things that are maybe outdated, need to be removed, or they're confusing and need clarification, that sort of thing, and then discuss, what those areas are here. Step two is then to take that input and actually draft some new language, bring it back to the commission for us to discuss, and then step three would be, incorporating those final changes into the bylaws and taking an actual vote on it. So we're on step one today. The Earth Day beat cost table. So I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about this to make sure we sort of have a game plan for this, because we're going to have some table space. And I know Tara said she's going to be there. I think another person or two said that they were definitely going to be there, but I can't remember who.
Zero and Matt said they'd be there with other organizations.
Yeah, right. That's April 19th at Switchyard Park. I think we need to make probably a final decision about what materials, if any, do we need to bring with us, and if anyone else is available to volunteer for part of the day to hang out and answer questions about sustainability.
I have it on my calendar. I can be there is it from noon to 4, is that right?
Noon to 4.
Yeah. I think maybe if I take a shift, maybe the second half would be better.
Okay.
I forget, it's a separate agenda item to talk about that, right?
I don't remember if I
Okay.
actually put it
Okay.
on there or not, so I figured now would be
Okay.
sneak it in.
So we have a table at Switchard. We talked a little bit about what to do. Sean had a recommendation to have our priorities that we identified at that work session and then talked about more at the last meeting, sort of the high level things that we as a commission have are focused on in our work, and having folks take a sticker and vote on, not vote, but kind of give their which of those they think is the highest priority. I got some poster board and stickers from Art Remains, so all secondhand stuff, reused stuff, and the stickers are very random. They're Christmas and feet and stuff. So that we can do that if that's something we want to do. The other thing that I was thinking about, I have some NFC business cards that I was gonna have out on, that I was thinking we would have out on the table, that would, and we could also put a QR code and a link, but the nice thing about an NFC tag is that you can just tap your phone to it and it'll open something up, so you don't have to figure out which app opens a QR code, as long as your phone is, has that feature. You just touch it and it can work a little faster. But having kind of get involved, so get involved as a citizen and apply it and take you to the application, get involved, come to a meeting with a link to our webpage where our meeting calendar is, and then maybe get involved for organizations because we've talked about wanting to partner more with organizations and working group grants, which again would probably just bring people to our website and our get our contact information, but so that's all I have thought of. I am open to other ideas. It might be good if we have materials or things to hand out, but we don't have to.
Yeah.
If we want to push other things that we know are going on for the city, like the grants or home improvement grants or other things like that. But I'm sure the city's table will also have that information. But multiple ways of getting that information to the public isn't bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to print out anything that you need.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we could do a one-pager, put together a one-pager or something just about the commission and some of those, grants that are available, ways for people to get involved, how to reach out to us, and that sort of thing. Could have those for people to take with them. Open to other ideas as well.
So that was one of the things I thought of. I figured of people that are coming to the Earth Day Festival might be a an audience of people that don't know that this exists, but might be interested in applying to the commission and filling some of those seats too, as a way of getting folks. Just, I've certainly talked to lots of people,
Mhm.
and I say I'm on this commission, and they're like, I didn't know that existed.
Mhm.
And in a way, kind of demystify the process a little bit.
Yeah. I like the NFC tag thing. That's yeah, fun, futuristic sort of thing.
We use them for ADHD accommodation around our house, so I
Oh,
have
yeah.
lots of them.
Nice,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
That might be a great time to promote the sustainable neighborhoods. That's still going this year, right?
It is, we're working
How's-
on getting it uploaded to Civiform. We've
Okay.
had all of our other programs uploaded, and so that's the next program that's gonna be
Okay,
uploaded.
yeah, as mentioned at your table anyway, but, I think, speaking of things people don't know about,
Yeah.
join a commission, okay, maybe, but like, get some money to do something
Yeah.
cool in your neighborhood.
I think the
It
green
seems like
home
a nice-
improvements plans and the sustainable
Yep.
neighborhoods,
Yep.
if there's literature we can hand out, or even something we can just have at the table, I think is a good.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. I can't guarantee that sustainable neighborhoods will be uploaded to Civiform before Earth Day, but at least people will know about it.
Yep.
Okay. Any other ideas? Easy demos.
IU is gonna be having some, I think some sustainability related events open to the public. I don't know if you wanted to share them out. We're doing a free bike tune-ups repair event. One on the 11th, 11 to 3, and the other one on the 21st, 11 to 3. The one on the 11th is in front of the Ballantyne Hall building, and then the other one is in front of the Wells Library on 10th Street. But yeah, anybody who brings swings by with a bicycle, wants them to check it out, or tune up, it's free for anybody in the community.
Okay, that's open to the public?
Yeah, anybody who shows up, yeah,
Okay.
it'll be
I can
outside.
Put an announcement out of that on our Instagram and our Facebook page.
Sure.
So you said free bike
Valentine
tune-up
Hall?
on April 11th?
Yeah, on the 11th and on the 21st, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Both at Valentine Hall?
The one on the 11th is at Ballantyne Hall. There's like a bike hub right there by the main entrance.
Okay.
Yeah, it says anybody shows up, first comes, first serve. They're happy to check out your bike. We're working with a local company, Revolution Bike, and Beans over on 10th Street.
21st is at Wells.
21st one's at Wells Library. Yeah, there's like a kind of the overhang sitting area. And then I think anybody who wanted to, if they were interested, would want to participate in our campus river cleanup event. That's going to be on April 18th, 10 to 3.
And that's a cleanup and restoration project.
Yeah.
The student group there.
Yeah, so there's no RSVP necessary. Anybody who wants to show up, just
Where is that?
Right
Look.
off of Eagleson, there's a parking
Oh.
garage there.
Yeah.
Where the like overpasses to the.
it says Riverbank near East parking garage.
Is that bridge that's always painted?
There's like a.
Yeah.
a
By,
restored
like over
wetland.
to the theater, to the auditorium.
Yes, yeah, that sounds right. Like across the street from there, kind of, or in that little bottleneck area there, yeah. By the new Eskenazi building, I think.
There are no bottleneck areas on campus, what are you talking about?
Well, I wish that were true.
You said April 18th, 10 to 3.
That's where I get mad
Yes.
every time I go to a show, because nobody knows how to zipper.
Mm.
It just waits.
And, yeah, I mean, this one is, I don't know that this is open to the public or not. It probably would be, but I'm not really sure. I'd have to ask. But we're gonna pilot a Fix-It clinic, and I know this is something we were talking about maybe doing in the city. So we're purchasing some supplies to, we don't really quite know what we're gonna get, but, I'll at least have some lessons learned, maybe from the event coming up. We're doing that on the 21st as well.
Fix-it clinic, what's that?
People bring in stuff that maybe if you could fix it instead of throwing it away and buying something new, you can fix it, repair it. So we got anything from clothing, sewing on a button,
It's ambitious.
fixing watches, eyeglasses, you know, this shoes, like this little things like how to, you know, fix, repair a keyboard or something on your computer. We'll see how it goes. But if I find out that this is open to the public, I can send a note out. But, yeah.
That's the sort of project I think would be great if somebody pitched to us. I mean, I also think it's pretty tough if you don't scope it to something, but like, if you scoped it to clothing, yeah, it would work really well.
The preparation, it might be glasses, it might be a phone, it might be a
Right.
shirt, you know, it's hard to get ready for that.
Yeah.
Discardia does mending clinics once a month at the library. Mhm.
That's good.
Yeah.
But
So
that's-
Maybe eligible to apply for a grant from us?
That's one of the things that at Earth Day, what I would like to try to do is to connect with the other organizations that are there as like, hey, what project do you wanna do, but you can't, cause you need $1,000. Like,
Right.
come talk to us, let's do a working group grant. Cause that
Yeah.
was one of the things we talked about in the work session and setting our priorities, is that us trying to like do everything from the ground up is not, it's not sustainable, but it's also just not realistic. There are tons of organizations that have the groundwork laid already to do this,
Yeah.
and they just need resources for access.
Where do we stand on working group funding? Have we spent anything this year?
I think everything was approved for the 2024 budget.
Yeah.
And I can give an update on where
Do we
those
know how
are.
much, how much we get for 2025?
$10,000.
10,000 in it? Yeah, I would love to see projects like that come through and kind of seed fund them or whatever. And then what, like, as we're, sorry, this is a little off topic, feel free to cut me off. As we're like funding some of these, is there a resource that we can point people to for like where they get their next round of funding if it's like a successful pilot or something? Like they get $1,000 from us to try something, if it works, and they want to kind of scale it up, do we have like a resource list?
Pretty volatile right now in the
Yeah.
grant industry.
So I've heard. All right, that's
The
a good point.
nonprofit industry is
She hurting a little bit right now.
upside down, let's say.
All right.
Wait to see what happens and maybe it'll be better than what it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea, though.
But it could bridge,
It'd be
I
nice
mean,
if it's
there could be
1,000.
lots
Yeah,
of
something,
organizations
but it's
that
not-
need to
Can
bridge their
pilot
funding.
something.
Yeah.
I'd like us to kind of be like an on-ramp for projects. But,
Yeah.
That reminds me, there is a grant that I don't know if now's the right time to bring it up. There is a grant that was gonna look into. It's through the Department of Transportation. And it sort of builds on some of the work that was done. Like you have, like in order to apply to it, you have to have completed this city's transportation safety action plan. And if you've done that, then you can go for additional funding, and it sounds like there might be a good amount there.
I would
Maybe.
not hang our hat on any federal funding right now.
Well, no, yeah, definitely not. But like I said, if I was reading through this campus safety, or the city safety, Bloomington has one, a safety transportation plan.
Is it the Safe Streets for All? Is that-
Maybe, I have it right here. Yeah, Safe Streets for All plan, yep. And it looked like there were potentially like, opportunities that would overlap where safety, sustainability, city, university could work together, but.
Regarding the $10,000 working group fund, is that something we want to kind of put out to the public to be like, come with us for an idea and maybe we'll find, you know, like beyond this, the Sustainable Neighborhood grant? Is that something we want to kind of distribute ourselves? How do we feel about that? I'd love to see it spent. I don't think we've ever.
You mean like advertise it basically?
Yeah, I mean, do we want to say like, hey, pitch your sustainability project beyond the sustainable neighborhoods, which is how much again?
$10,000 for
Okay.
sustainable neighborhoods.
Great.
But that's capped at 1,000 per project,
Right,
right?
project,
right.
yes.
Where the working groups theoretically could be more.
Yeah, so and I don't think we wanna say, hey, there's 10,000 available, but something to just like, come to us with ideas, cause it's hard to do stuff on our own.
That's what I wanna do. at
Yeah,
Earth Day.
So-
I
Is
don't know
that-
quite how to phrase that,
I mean,
but.
what the money is it's like money for BCOS working groups to like do their work. It's very loose in
Right.
terms of how it's described, and so basically it's like
And
we
if somebody else is doing
sponsor.
because working group stuff, then
Yeah,
great.
we're one of us is like, you know, sponsoring
yeah,
or like the
yeah.
connection to it. So yeah, so I don't know if it's like a thing on the website because I don't know that we want to field that many people
Yeah.
like applications.
Well, the sustainable
But-
neighborhoods, are you getting applications this year? Now it's been out for a little while?
We haven't uploaded it to
It's not out
Civiform
yet.
yet,
Got it,
but
okay.
we will be hopefully within the next couple of weeks.
Well, we should definitely use Earth Day as a venue to at least, verbally.
Yeah, verbally,
Start
yep,
looking for
absolutely.
opportunities out there and seeing if
You
we
got
get
some cool idea, pitch it to us.
Yeah, cause I think like, the one
Partner
that.
with us is maybe the verb.
I think
Yeah,
that,
right.
yeah.
Because I think the one that, that Andrew initiated, the Canopy Bloomington was like a great example of somebody else already has like the infrastructure and the plan ready to go, and he found them, and like they were able to get something worked out really quick, right?
Yeah.
So.
And
yeah.
any of us can do that if we know
Right.
it'll work. Like
Mhm.
we don't have to do it through. But that was sort of like how I was gonna frame it for the get the like materials that we have out is sort of like get involved, like be a part of the commission, get involved, like come to the public comment period or just watch a meeting or partner with us, work with BCOS for organizations for that. And I'm not quite sure what the best like venue for like getting them in touch with us is. I don't really wanna put like my personal email address on there.
Oh, sure.
But I could direct it to the website,
Yeah.
which I think directs to Sean's contact info.
Right, yeah, there's the IU sustainability email, I think, on the website, and I assume that goes to you or somebody else in the office.
Our
It's like
over general email.
Some-
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like a general info email.
Yeah.
Have we in the past thought about like working with local high schools, as a lot of them probably have? Okay, I don't know what I'm talking about. My kids are way too young. I would suspect they have some sort of sustainability clubs, projects, classes, and can it be like, hey, come up with a plan for $1,000 and pitch it to us, and that's a great way to get money out doing something in a really kind of visible, high impact way.
Mhm. Yeah. I
It's
mean,
like, you want a greenhouse? Yeah, pitch us what it would take.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hate that money not
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
getting spent.
I know.
It's definitely a priority for us this year. It's
Mhm.
something that we specifically identified, in the process, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we don't want to be waiting until the end of the year. I think we do want to keep moving on. We've got a little off track here.
Yep.
But just to wrap up the topic on Earth Day, so we've got at least 2 volunteers for like the table. There will be others from the commission that are there as well. And maybe you guys can like coordinate.
I'll
who's
be
coming
there.
at which
I
time and
plan
all
to
that.
be there the whole time. If somebody else can be there and give me a
Yeah.
break, that's great, but
Cool.
Set
I'll look into
together.
putting together maybe like a 1-pager or something so we can have like a flyer to hand out to people at least. And
Yeah.
Something like that. set
And I
up.
can reach out if you have materials about the grants that are gonna be at your table, we can put them at ours as well.
Cool.
The more we can get the money opportunities in front of people, I think the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. The next bullet point I have on here is about the council 2026 budget priorities process, just to make people aware, and this is good timing for Councilmember Rallo to come in. He could probably speak in a lot more detail about this than I can. But from what I understand, they're doing the budget priority process on the council side a little bit different this year. It's an outcome-based budgeting model. And there's just a list of dates there just to kind of give you a sense for what the timeline's looking like. I think, budgeting stuff is something that a commission like ours should always be at least aware of and kind of following along with. We might not always necessarily have something that we want to say about it, but we might, and so we should be aware of kind of what the timeline looks like. So there's going to be, you know, the members of the council are bringing their own sort of priorities, you know, to council, I think tomorrow, just for an initial discussion, and then there's going to be a special committee that kind of workshops that and brings it back to a vote. The actual, like, you know, budget process where the administration proposes a budget and the council votes on it is not going to happen until later in the year, but this is sort of getting the ball rolling on that. So just so folks are aware, you know, this might be a time where we're kind of following along with what some of these priorities are, and we might want to, you know, have input on that and say, you know, we think this should be a priority or something along those lines. Speaking of policy, on the next slide here, I want to say a few words about resolutions, because I think the policy side of things is something that we could, you know, get more active with. We've talked about this before. It's something that we kind of want to do a little bit more of in 2025. You know, really kind of lean into that advisory role where we can actually make recommendations. So I want to just like take a few minutes to talk about resolutions, because I think it's a tool that is underused in this commission. We could do a lot more with it. So I just want to make sure everyone kind of understands how it works. So what is a resolution? Really, it's just like a formal expression of our commission's collective position, or maybe a recommendation that we want to make, or some intent that we want to declare. It generally doesn't have any sort of power to it, right? We can't pass a resolution and force anybody to do anything. We don't have any authority. We could, you know, in principle, pass a resolution directed towards ourselves, and maybe that would have some, you know, some authority. But we can only affect, you know, what we have here in the commission. They're usually split up into a couple different sections. So you've got the whereas clauses, where you're kind of explaining, you know, background information, context, or rationale behind the resolution. And then you have the resolved clauses, the therefore be it resolved clauses, that actually give the specific recommendations or positions or what have you. And it sort of serves as an official record of the commission's consensus. So you can go back in time and see resolutions that this commission has passed in years prior to get a sense for what issues were important to them. And it's nice to kind of have that trail to follow. So there's a few different ways that we could use resolutions here in BCOS. We could, you know, recommend policies to council or city administration. We could, you know, use it to really emphasize, you know, commission priorities and action plans that we have. We could request other people. We can't force anybody to do anything, but we can of course request for them to do something if we wanted information or studies conducted. We can organize our own internal initiatives and working groups. Again, just documenting like consensus positions if we really want to take a stand on a particular issue and just let the world know that that's where we stand. We can do that. And again, just to create that historical record. So I want to make sure folks understand that you don't have to come to the commission and say, you know, can we draft a resolution about this thing or that thing? Any BCOS commissioner can draft one, and you don't need permission to start. So you can always just work on something and bring it to us when you think that it's ready, or you can start working on something, get it kind of halfway there, and then bring it to us just to review and get some input on, and then you take it back and keep working on it. So it's not too hard to start. You can just choose a topic that you're passionate about, that you think we should take a position on, and figure out what you want that outcome to be. Do you want to make a recommendation to somebody? Do you want a change in policy? Do you want just to make a statement? And then consider some of the arguments that you would make in order to support that position, and then start drafting it using the new template that we've created for resolutions. So there's a link there on the slides you can click to get to that. It's also on the shared Google Drive, the read-only shared Google Drive that we have. And then just real quick, we'll walk through kind of what a resolution looks like. The next slide there. So this might be reviewed to some folks, but this is sort of what the template looks like. Well, actually, this is just a copy of the resolution we passed last December. You know, it can have a sponsor. There can be multiple commissioners that sort of want to be the ones that are putting this forward. It has a resolution number, which is just the year, followed by a sequential incremental number. And then there's sort of like a title, which is just a description of what it's doing, starting with the word to, so to support changes, blah, blah, blah. And then in the red, you have all these whereas clauses, which kind of lays out the rationale. And then the blue section here, you have the different, therefore clauses, which is where the real meat of the resolution is. So not too hard to decode. On the next slide, I borrowed this chart. I sort of adapted it from what I found on the IUB Graduate and Professional Student Government website, the resolution process. So if you're not totally sure where to start and how it works, you can just kind of follow this. Step one is just to brainstorm an idea, come up with an idea for a resolution. Step two is sort of to think about, is this the right place for this idea? Is it appropriate for BCOS to take a stance on this thing? Is it within our purview? Then do some research, collect your ideas, collect your arguments. And then, you might strategize sort of, what does this really need to look like in terms of crafting the resolution to get the desired effect? And then it's time to start writing. So you can draft it. And then submitting a resolution, you could just send it to me or whoever the chair is at the time, maybe for just a quick spot check to make sure the formatting and stuff looks good. And then we'll get it circulated to everyone on the commission just to get a chance to read it. And then we'll bring it up at the next meeting that we can. For resolutions, the bylaws say that we have to do 2 votes on it, so 2 readings on it. So we bring it up in one meeting as a first reading. Folks can discuss, ask questions, and then we would bring it up again at the following meeting for a second reading and a final vote. And as we've done in the past, there is a way to do all that in one meeting, but it's a slightly higher bar to do. And then step 10 is also an important one, which is follow-up. So if the resolution is like making a recommendation to council, for example, then in that case, I would probably take that to a council meeting or transmit it by email or something to say, hey, BCOS did this thing, here's what we believe, wanted to let you know. Yeah, so we want to make sure that those resolutions are actually having an impact. So that's all I have on resolutions, but I just want to encourage folks to be thinking about, what kind of policy stances can we take? If it makes sense, and we can put out a handful of resolutions this year, I think that would be a good thing. Helps keep us active and keep us thinking. Yeah.
I'm just curious if there's any specific times of the year where it would try to make sense to line up a resolution, or is it just sort of as it's ready we can bring it?
I think it depends on the content. So for example, since we were just talking about the budgeting process, if there was a resolution that we wanted to pass that specifically recommended a budget priority or something like that, then it might be time sensitive. We might need to get it in by a certain time to have people consider it, right? Other than that, I don't think so.
What does it take to be an official resolution from BCOS? Like unanimous agreement, 51% agreement?
I believe it's a simple majority.
Okay.
For the 2 readings, the 2 separate readings, and that's a simple majority of the filled seats on the commission. And that would be like a recorded vote, not a unanimous consent sort of thing, but a roll call vote.
And we can, if I understand correctly, we can, if we want to see what the city has done previously, we can look at the climate action dashboard, and that's sort of the hub for all the information, so that way we're not recommending something that's already been done, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I think that would be sort of part of the research phase, is to figure out what, is there a way that we can already, if we're going to make a recommendation, how can we get information about what's been done already, so that we're making that in an intelligent way. So yeah, in that case, like the climate dashboard would be a good resource to go to, and then following up with the ESD, you're right, if there's something that isn't on the dashboard, it might still be in progress, it's just not on the webpage yet, right? So, yeah, good question. Cool.
Could I
Yeah.
add something? I think it's important to do this. I think it's a great idea for this commission or other commissions, because it helps to guide city policy. I think if it could be adopted by a commission, presented to the city council and to the mayor, it does have an effect at times, not always, but, so for instance, the whole climate action process began with a resolution to support Kyoto, back, I don't know, 2003. And something I know that Jamie Scholl worked on was a food charter. Was a resolution to endorse a food charter to help guide community decisions about policies and programs that affect a local food system. So when she was chair of the Food Policy Council, that was in 2015. And we've done some things directed at food policy, for instance, the Farm Stop that was supported. Certainly supporting the farmers market's been going on for a long time, but the point is that I think that it's not just empty air. It can be, it can be adopted, and we can pursue it, try to put money toward aims that are, endorsed by a council or a commission like the Sustainability Commission. That's all. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, great. So, yeah, I put those timestamps on the agenda. I'm already behind, so we'll see how effective they really are. I think we'll make up ground a little bit later on. So, yeah, we can move on then to Waste Management Working Group report. Matt, do you have anything for us this week?
Yeah, as everybody's heard, or maybe you haven't heard, Taste of Bloomington's coming back, and the Taste of Bloomington. And as some of you know, I tried to do a food waste working groups grant last year for Lotus. Well, it makes complete sense just to move that to the Taste of Bloomington. So I sent an email out to, what's his name?
It's
Last name Davis.
Yeah, Jordan Davis.
Jordan Davis, who's spearheading the Taste with Chocolate Mousse, trying to get him to come in and speak to us. Because ultimately that, we're dealing with food, it would be a great place to educate the public about food options of how to deal with their food waste, specifically bokashi. So I'm gonna just take that, all the work that we did previously and apply that to the Taste of Bloomington. Still gonna ask for $5,000, and on Thursday I'm gonna be doing public comment at the Waste Reduction District Board of Directors meeting to put this on to their radar, because the exec committee last year loved the idea. And then the other part of it is we're talking to, this is the extension, talking to a farmer who wants to set up a black soldier fly larva setup. He's given us a quote of about $7,000 to set that up, with the idea of all festivals in Bloomington would now ideally have some sort of bokashi component, and then they would be tied to the farmers, and that food waste would go out to the farmer, who would then grow black soldier flies from that, which would then feed chicken, pigs, so on and so forth, keeping that whole circle. So,
Which farmer?
His name is, I'm blanking his last name, Larry. He was all part of the Food Policy Council, Harvest Partners. That's where we get a lot of our meat. And he currently does take food prep food waste, which is he's allowed to for his pigs, but he's really wanted to do this black soldier fly thing. So we're trying to tie that in at a higher level. So I'll be rehashing from last year that, but specifically for the Taste. So we're going to try and ask Jordan Davis to come and speak to the commission, hopefully next month or the month after that.
When is the Taste scheduled?
August 2nd. And it was just announced last week, so trying to get on that as soon as possible.
I can help with rewriting the grant if you need.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. I think a lot of what we did, we can
Yeah,
repurpose.
just change a couple of words here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I want to definitely get him in so we can show that they're interested in that as well. And yeah, just a fantastic opportunity to introduce it to the community and start to build a consensus that this is what the community needs to take action on.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. Cool.
I had
Yeah.
a sort of a question, just sort of on that, sort of same line about, because it's great that, if we get farmers that can use the food scraps, that's amazing. I'm thinking like, okay, if we, you know, a future where we scaled up composting, you know, it might be a little bit harder to, you know, maintain the, you know, quality and things like that. And I was looking on the dashboard on the City of Bloomington website, and it was talking about how we've looked at anaerobic digesters at the wastewater treatment plant in the past. Did that go anywhere, or
There wasn't enough
there wasn't enough?
sewage.
Yeah, there wasn't enough HSOW, high strength organic, I forget, HSOW. So there were 3 scenarios when they were looking at it, and one, the city would have lost money on it. One would have been a break even, and one they would have been in the black, and they weren't able to find enough
Food waste.
material. And it's not just food waste. it's
Or like
more-
any organic material?
Yeah, they'd have to find, and they made a call out to companies within, I don't know, 100 miles, I could be incorrect on that, and they just didn't get enough responses to show that they would have enough material. But I did have the field trip to Caldwell's Inc. out in Shelby County, and they have permits already for an anaerobic biodigester. Granted, it's 66 miles away, but they're doing all that stuff. And the field trip was very enlightening. They have everything that Monroe County, they can handle all of Monroe County's food waste. It's just we need more stakeholders. We need multiple entities like IU, like Cook, like the City of Bloomington, like the waste.
They're doing
management
Windrow right now,
to
aren't they?
split. Yeah, they're doing Monroe. Yeah.
So could they potentially take like IU food waste?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, it's
In
just
smaller
getting,
quantities.
it's just collection and getting it.
Sure.
So, and right
That's
now,
not
we're.
farther
we're-
than where the trash is going.
Correct, it's almost the
Right.
exact same amount of miles.
Yeah, when,
So, yeah, 66 miles
Yeah.
both ways.
well, that's interesting, because we're gonna pilot a digesters, or, I'm sorry, dehydrator.
Dehydrator, yeah, you mentioned that.
And that might make it easier, but, yeah, well, we should.
Right, but
touch
if,
on
but
that.
if- but if we have, I mean, the waste reduction district already has the infrastructure to, you know, take smaller cans and aggregate it into a larger. We just, once again, the waste reduction district's budget can handle the cost for 2 years maybe, but we just need to split it up between larger entities to start.
I'd contact Kaido Foods out on the east side of Indianapolis. It's the biggest produce and fruit packing plant in the Midwest.
So, they already, Caldwell's already has a depacking facility. Like I saw them have boxes of Ensure.
Yeah.
And there was one employee that was just opening the boxes and dumping the bottles of Ensure there. And then another machine was picking it up and dumping it into the depacking, and they just crushed them all. And all this went into a pit. And then from that pit, they sucked that up into a tanker. The tanker took it over to their, I call it facility, but it's just an outdoor area. And
Yeah.
there's a pit that they dumped it all in, and they took manure and wood chips and put it all in there to suck it up, and then it went into the windrows.
This is Caldwell's?
Yeah, this is Caldwell's, yeah, they're getting like stuff from major corporations like you're talking about, from Colorado, from New York, like they have the capacity, and they've got 4,000 acres of which to turn those windrows into compost and use that. So they have the capacity to take care of everything that Monroe County's got. It's just, you can't have one entity paying for it all. That's why we need a collaboration of stakeholders.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
right now, the
All right, we
transportation.
should probably move on. I think.
Sorry.
Is there anything else from
We
waste
could
management?
keep going on that for a while.
Yeah, no,
Thanks.
I appreciate that.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the ad hoc committee sustainability assessment report from Tara, and there is a draft document for us.
So after our meeting last week, I incorporated some of the feedback from the commission. I've added the 2025 approved numbers to all of the figures to show sort of the trend in all of these areas. Added also just like a little bit more language of what is in this section, why we're looking at budget numbers as a way of assessing the city's investment in sustainability. And remember, specifically, we're looking at the climate action plan goals around energy in the built environment and like reducing emissions from our built environment in the city. If we scroll down a little bit, so these are all the same figures that we looked at last year, just with the addition of the 2025 adopted numbers. Can you scroll to the next page? This is I added also the natural resources disaggregation in here. to this breakdown. This is within the Parks and Rec budget, and these are only inflation-adjusted numbers for golf, which is like Cascades, basically urban forestry, urban green spaces, and natural resources. I also added some context around specifically urban forestry. I had some communication also with some folks in the city about urban green spaces. That's less inventoried, so it's harder to provide appropriate context there. Urban forestry was really interesting. There are, the city's website is a little out of date, but the urban forester shared with me his inventory, which is like a website, it's publicly available, that we have at least 23,000 trees that the city has inventoried, and probably that many more that are in like wooded areas and right-of-ways and things that are not inventoried. And that tool also includes the software that the city uses for inventorying trees also puts in an assessed sort of like financial benefit to the city of our canopy, which is I put in that it saves the city about $60,000 in carbon sequestration, stormwater mitigation, and air pollution removal. And then I add a little bit of analysis that like we've seen small increases in urban forestry's inflation adjusted budget, but effectively like every year they've basically doubled the number of inventory trees that they're responsible for, and in the same period of time their budget has barely increased over time. So sort of like some commentary on what's in there. I had some feedback from Sean and Jolie about splitting out the sustainability actions specifically. I couldn't find like the line items that would specify the sustainable action. So what I haven't done in here and what I would like to do, I'd like to do one more draft of this, or add to this draft, is adding in some of the grant money and stuff that's been given out by that department. I also tried to pull out like the tech trades and like some of the areas where there's been budget approvals for that, like that department that maybe are not relevant to this report. It's not, the data is just like not perfect for doing that, but just try to provide that context. Can we scroll to the next page? And then I also looked at, so this is ESD, and then the last thing that's new, can we go to one more page, is I added in housing. We talked about last meeting, adding in housing because of the previous resolution, since we're talking about resolutions from this commission, recommending a housing first approach, a housing first policy approach that the city should take for dealing with issues of housing insecurity and any of the related policy issues that come up for that. And so I pulled the housing numbers. This was a fascinating one because it's been really volatile, but it sort of averages out. I put the inflation adjusted average for the years that are included to kind of show like about each year, which is only slightly more than we approve for golf, which is also mentioned in the text there. The other portion of this report that I'm responsible for, that I intended to get for this meeting, but then I got COVID, is just some other city action policies, just documenting some of the stuff that ESD has done that they have on their website, and some of the things that the city talks about. And then what is still missing from this is if the other section that Evan's working on, and then combining the two, and if we want to make any recommendations or conclusions before we finalize the draft and submit it to council. I can incorporate feedback or if there's questions.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's looking really good. Is there a public golf course in Bloomington? What is that?
Cascades.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
What does it mean to spend money? Like, what does that housing budget look like?
Like what is it? What are like the line items within it?
Well, yeah.
It's public. My understanding is it's the budget for like public housing that is managed by the city.
Got it.
But if people know, we can add that context in. That's based on my research.
Is that like building units, public units? Is it?
I think it's management of the public units. Yeah, I can look at the disaggregated like line items and see if I can get more insight into like what it is, but mostly it's, the way that it's split out is line items is like salaries, maintenance, it's not specific, like specific facilities
Seeing
or
this like
anything.
tripling or something between 22 and 23, I wonder, like, are there big projects that would have some of that variability?
Yeah, I wonder if it also might, if it's, if voucher, like housing vouchers are included in that, if there's particular budgets, but yeah, because it was so volatile, that's why I put that line in there to sort of show like year over year. And also, I should note that all of these I'm basing on approved budgets, which are like the budgets that have gone through the approval process. Actual expenditures can vary, but I chose the approved budgets, and I think this is, I put this in the introduction, and if it's not clear, I can add some additional language that like, kind of treating it from the perspective of that budgets are like moral documents, or their statement of like priorities, even if like things change during the year and the actual expenditures, yes, I did put that in there. But that it's sort of a proxy of the intent to invest in these areas, is the analysis approach that I'm taking here.
Golf, public housing.
Yeah.
So this is new, like, city-owned, public.
As far as I know, what I can glean from the city budget documents and how they describe the budget items.
Gotcha.
But I'm pretty sure that it's the city housing authority
Gotcha.
that does public housing.
You know, one thing about this, is it worth going to people who could desegregate this a little bit more and just be like, hey, you know, before we put this out, can you confirm what this number amounts to, or why it might fluctuate so much, or do you have thoughts on this, Sean, or are there
Yeah.
people we could talk to and be like, hey, could you explain this thing, that thing?
I'm wondering for, I just noticed like the, what was the category?
Yeah, the urban green space
forestry.
stands
So,
out.
I'm not sure if you see that I have funding that I provided for like the Cool Corridors project where we're planting trees, is that included here?
Only if it's if it's a separate line item. This is based like just on, I've downloaded like the CSVs of the budget of the line items, but it doesn't, if it's under another department's budget, it wouldn't show up. This is specifically like the urban forestry
Yeah.
budget line item. So there might be other ways, and that's maybe context that we can put in here, that there might be other ways that some of these things get funding. But these department, like this is what's, yeah.
Like ESD is funding the Cool Corridors project. We're providing funding to Haskell Smith to set up a tree maintenance program, grant program for residents who have a tree that needs to come down or needs to be pruned. They can request funding for that, especially for low-income residents. So ESD is providing funding for that. And then also the tree tenders program, I don't know if that's exactly urban forestry, but Canopy Bloomington trains high school students on tree maintenance throughout the summer. So that's another program. So there's 3 different programs that we're supporting that supports the urban forestry.
And it might still be worth noting what is like regular city budget versus add-on, you know what I mean? Because those programs might come and go, so.
Yeah.
But I just hate to put this out with a stamp when there's in fact other things that aren't included in it.
Yeah. I can look into what I can find, and I can also put in, like, that's also why I sort of am focusing on just looking at the approved, because the expenditures can be so varied, and when there's projects and grants and matches and all that, I've sort of reached my limit of my area of expertise of budget analysis.
Yeah.
I'm not an accountant, but I think seeing what else we can find and then framing it to say that we're really specifically looking at just like where the outlays are during the budget priority process.
And also seeing if we could find, for example, what does this increase in urban green space investment amount to?
That's what.
There might be
yeah.
a handful of questions of like, hey, what's going on in 2023 housing? And
Yeah, I communicated with a couple of folks at Parks and Rec and the planning department and stuff, and the green spaces, they're trying to help me figure out like the acreage, because that's what I wanted to figure out, but it's
a lot of, it's like right of ways, it's the rivers, it's some of the edge
They
forest
started putting
area.
in butterfly gardens in City Hall, and it's just a lot more work than.
Yeah, it's
daffodils or whatever.
it's our parks acreage is documented, but the green space, you know, every single meridian that's like
Yeah.
that the city is responsible for is included in that, and so it's like a harder number to get. So I'm trying to find context for that
Yeah,
number
yeah.
the same way that I did with the
Hard
trees,
to
but
pin
it's a
down.
little harder to pin down. So I'll update this also to sort of add that context that it's just like, but there's been an increase in planned spending there probably because there's been an increase in like the number of urban green spaces.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, so it's looking really, really good. So, yeah, we'll keep.
What's
Keep
the,
pushing it
what's the
forward.
next step
Yeah.
here?
So Evan has a section that he's working on, so I don't know his timeline for presenting that. I can make edits to this, and then once we have both sections, that was sort of how we split it up to avoid running afoul of open door policy. Then we can I can combine them and make some sort of like summary, like make a final draft of everything combined once he's had an opportunity to share his half with the commission.
And I'm about halfway done with that, so probably same process, right? Bring it, present it, get feedback, and then you can do everything.
Yeah, but everything we've done, because it's part of our packet materials, is like publicly available now. If it's, I know because the budget process is happening now.
Just
Or it's
with
about
the
to start.
thought, is anything being left out? You know, maybe, you've got all this in spreadsheets, some kind with the year and the item that it was, the money was directed on.
Mhm.
Maybe, Sean, do you think, you know, maybe the spreadsheets could just, maybe we should go to the controller's office and say, is anything missing? Or,
Yeah.
or the various departments, I mean, I guess, where you got the.
Yeah, I can reach out. I mean, that's what I.
I'm not
yeah.
suggesting more work for you, I'm actually thinking maybe the commission could pass it on, or Sean, we could.
Yeah, I can take a look at it
Sure,
and
yeah.
see what's missing or.
This is everything has been downloaded from. I just straight downloaded from Open Finance.
Yeah.
So any
Got it.
spreadsheets that I have, the city has.
Got it.
And everybody else has because it's publicly available data.
Yeah.
So it's just CSVs that I downloaded from there. I don't have.
Okay.
I haven't done any like. The only thing that I added, like by hand, are the 2025 numbers because those aren't in the spreadsheets, but they're just in a different. They're on a different dashboard. They're not in the exports yet.
Okay.
Although they might be now. They weren't when I did the export originally.
Well, it's a lot of work. Thank you, guys, for doing this.
These are my fun free time graphs as opposed to the graphs that I do at my job.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be really helpful to the council, to examine this.
And I'm using the CPI inflation calculator from
Oh.
BLS to calculate the inflation adjusted numbers, and I'm using January for all, like January of that year. It's in there for context, but, so it's all inflation adjusted to 2018. It's all inflation adjusted January of that year to January of 2018.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We'll move on next to a report from Council Ex Officio, Councilmember Rowell.
I don't have a report.
Okay.
But, you know, I'm open to any questions. We do have, just to add on to what you said, the council's got a couple of, it has this fiscal committee and it has a budget committee. And so we're looking at this, you know, outcome-based budgeting as the optimal way, you know, getting, you know, results essentially. And so we're in the process of examining the budget right now, previous year, and with the idea of proposing what we would like to see. So this could come at a very good time, this report, in the next month or two, you think?
I think so. I mean, I can add based on the feedback that we've had at this meeting to
Yeah.
my section, and then we can either, like, if we want to incorporate the components that Evan's looking at,
Uh-huh.
which are some more like policy kind of action things, less boring budget numbers,
Yeah.
we can combine them or we could do it as two separate reports if we think that, the timing is important to get it out faster.
Yeah, well, we start, actually, I don't know what the schedule is this year, but I think that we begin considering the budget early summer, and then we kind of look at it in much more detail in late summer, and so we have we have time.
Yeah, so I think if Evan can share his stuff at the next meeting for feedback from the commission, and then we can combine it into a final document for, hopefully for our June meeting to finalize the report. And I'll work on, some of the additional feedback or context around the numbers. I tried to at least in this draft, not do too much editorializing about what the numbers mean, just make some very apparent, because I want the commission to weigh in on sort of so what does all this mean?
Mhm.
And what, if anything, are we recommending to council based on this information?
Great, thanks. I don't have anything else.
Perfect, thanks so much. Okay, our next agenda item is the bylaws review. So these next two items we can go through fairly quickly. We had a lot of time on the agenda to flex, but I'll point you towards the proposed focused areas here in this memo. Where should we look at actually making changes to the bylaws here? This is the list that I've come up with and interested in input from this. So number one is just a kind of structural reorganization of the document. So right now there's sort of a mix of Roman numerals and numbers and stuff, and it can be a little tricky to reference a particular, verbally, a particular section. So maybe just making that a little more intuitive, a little easier to navigate. Number two is a pretty minor thing, just some editorial improvements. There's some areas where the language could be a little bit more clear, a couple maybe grammar or spelling things, or some formatting inconsistencies. Nothing too substantive there. Municipal code references is the third one. This one I think is a little bit more substantive. There's a lot of spots in the bylaws where we are just verbatim repeating what's in the municipal code. And that can be helpful if you're just looking at the bylaws and you kind of want to get the full picture and you don't have to go and cross-reference with the municipal code. But the problem you can run into is if the code changes, in a particular section, then now our bylaws are maybe out of date because we're not just referencing it, we're replicating the text. Doesn't happen that often, but of course we just had some changes recently to our part of the code. So some of that might be out of date now. So, my recommendation for that would be basically, instead of actually just repeating verbatim the text, referring to the BMC. So saying, as, pursuant to BMC section blah, blah, blah. And then here's additional text right on top of that. So that it's always deferring back to the code as sort of the ultimate authority there. Number four is the annual meeting requirements. So March is defined as our annual meeting. That's when we're supposed to hold elections. And we're also supposed to review the bylaws and publish this sustainable assessment report. So that sustainable assessment report is no longer a requirement in the code. And I would recommend that we don't include that as a requirement in the bylaws either. We may from time to time decide that it would be a good idea to do that. But I think it's a little cumbersome to require that it's done once per year and at a certain time of the year. And what was the other one? The bylaw review. I don't think we necessarily need to do that every year either, at least not like a big review. Maybe just a checkup to see if anything in the code has changed that's now requiring us to make a change. But I don't know if we necessarily need to do that at a certain time every single year. But elections we should still do. Number 5 is the sustainability assessment. I actually just mentioned that in number 4. Number 6 is the meeting structure flexibility. So right now the order of agenda items is defined in the bylaws and it's fixed. It's a this shall be the order of events sort of language. So I would recommend prescribing certain things that need to be in an agenda, like approval of the minutes and that sort of thing, and certain reports. But maybe providing more flexibility in terms of the order of events, right? So that we're not so locked into a particular structure. So, for example, I've kind of got this like member announcements thing hanging out at the end of the agenda. You know, maybe that's something we want, but we don't really use it for too much, and it's required that it's there. So that's why it's there. Number 7 is resolution definition. So we've had a little bit of like talk in the past about like what really is a resolution, and we talked about it today. So we kind of know what a resolution is, you know, for the most part, but you know, what things are there, you know, we've had some confusion about like, is this a resolution? Do we have to vote on it like it's a resolution? Like if we're, you know, awarding some grants or something, or can we just do that through normal business? So it might be good to kind of define a little more clearly what things are resolutions and what things are ordinary business. And then thinking about the 2 readings rule revision. So like we've mentioned, we've got the 2 readings rule for resolutions, which is, you know, can be really helpful for, you know, if we're making a statement to the rest of the world. It might be good to have the time to really deliberate on that and give people time to kind of absorb it and recommend changes and not do anything, you know, too hastily. At the same time, it can potentially, if we have a quick turnaround that we're trying to get something out, it can actually be sort of constraining, especially for a group like ours that meets once per month and sometimes only once every 2 months if, you know, we don't have a quorum or something. So maybe kind of re-examining, you know, what the rule is for passing resolutions, if there should be a little additional flexibility there, is something we could look at. John, question?
As I recall, the 2 readings is basically like, the first time is a pretty formal proposal of the resolution discussion, the next time we vote on it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is there a way, I like the idea of seeing it 2 times, but even just knowing that somebody's working on a resolution that will be proposed next time, and like discussing it earlier where it's
Maybe less formal, but still you get your eyes on it twice, chance for feedback, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so that could be part of it. Could be like what constitutes a first reading.
Yeah.
Does it need to be like the full text ready to go, or could it be like, here's the stuff I'm going to
Here's
put
where
in the
I'm going.
resolution,
Yep.
but it's not written yet, and then you know, and that's maybe like a first reading. So, yeah, definitely things to think about. Where can we make it more flexible without, you know, like just tearing all the walls down and going crazy, right? So like I said, next steps would be to start actually working what, you know, draft changes would look like. But is there anything that folks might want to see that's not on this list yet, or anything that's on this list that you don't think we should be touching?
I think there was also something that we brought up at the last meeting on the responsibilities of the officers. There was
Okay.
like the vice president had some responsibility that was something that doesn't exist anymore. I forget what it was.
Okay.
It was like making recommendations for some committee or something that is like not a thing that exists anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good. Anything else? Okay, well, I'll start working on some language changes and then bring that to our next meeting, and we can workshop that a little bit or talk a little bit more, and then sort of get it finalized and buttoned up for the following meeting.
Justin, one
Yeah.
quick question regarding resolutions and first or second readings. I'm sure it refers to some need for public notice.
Mm.
Do you happen to know what that is?
So, I mean, we have to do all these things at a publicly noticed meeting either way, whether it's a first reading or a second reading, or we're doing it all in one go.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's, you know, any requirement that's specific to resolutions versus ordinary
Maybe
business
it's
that we would do.
something that's worth checking out, just to
Mhm.
make sure you don't run afoul of that.
Sure.
When you have your draft bylaws, I can send them up to legal for review, just
Okay.
to get feedback.
That would be
and
great.
Make sure that everything's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking about open door policy, which I know isn't set by us, I'm wondering if there's any additional flexibility that we could build into the bylaws. You know, like, our working groups, specifically working groups, start to shift it into a more formal structure, which can kind of get in the way of collaborating. I don't know what that would look like, but that's something that we've kind of diverted into talking to a lot.
Mhm.
That's obviously a sticking point, so.
Yeah, and the thing is that, working groups aren't even defined in the bylaws. So we've sort of, built them up and structured them on our own, just through regular business, but yeah, it's not specifically defined. So that might be one question, is whether we want to define something like that, like what a working group is and how they're formed, or not, if we want to keep the flexibility and not, So, yeah, something to think about for next time. Cool. Okay, so let's move on to the next section, which is, let's see, if we scroll, we've got the bylaws as an attachment to this one, but then if we scroll a little bit farther, we're not gonna, it's a couple more pages. So we're not gonna go through the whole draft annual report right now. We don't have the time. And also, it just wouldn't be fun to read a document like this all together at once. So, hopefully between now and the next meeting, you'll have a chance to read through this at your leisure, mark it up, make some notes or whatever. I'm thinking maybe one way that we can do input on this, let's see, it's down a little bit farther. There it is. I could send around like a Google form for submitting feedback on this. I've got line numbers on everything. So if you're like, I think we should word the thing in line 10 differently, or there's a typo here, or you need a figure that shows this, you can fill out the form, list the line number, list your comment, that sort of thing. And then that can all come to me, and I can review all those, and I can start to make those changes between meetings. And then we wouldn't be running afoul of open door law because we wouldn't be collaborating with each other. I would just be collecting input, right? And, so, yeah, since we don't have too much time to really go through like what's covered in the report so far, and what might be missing, or what did we not describe well enough, maybe doing that sort of offline, read it in your spare time, and then start sending feedback, and then we can have a longer discussion about it next time. How's that sound to folks?
I really like that approach. I think I'll incorporate using line numbers into whatever final draft we share for
Yeah.
feedback to the whole commission. I think that's a great.
Yeah, I've used this approach before in large scientific collaborations of like hundreds of people, where we all have to review a paper before we submit it to the journal, and that seemed to be a pretty good system for collating all the different changes. Cool, yeah, and I'll just say, is basically, the perspective here was sort of like looking at what we accomplished in 2024, where we saw challenges in 2024, and then looking ahead 2025, what are our priorities, what are we hoping to achieve in the year ahead. So that's kind of the basic flow. Okay, good. So look out for an email from me with some instructions on how to submit feedback and comments and stuff on this document, and then we can start to craft it a little bit more next time. Okay, great. We don't have any resolutions for first or second reading, so that brings us to the staff liaison report from Sean.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
As you all know, we lost two city attorneys earlier this year. Thankfully, we're starting to see some movement on contracts that we've been waiting on. And so I have some updates for you. The Canopy Bloomington tree replacement project that you approved at the end of last year, the contract has been signed by all parties, and the payment will be made during our next claim cycle.
Nice.
So that one's out the door. Yay! And then the Grandview Hills Neighborhood Association's Pollinator Garden project, that contract is out for signatures now, as well as the contract with Alicia Spear for the TerraCycle 2.0 project. That one's out for signature as well.
Awesome.
So hopefully those two will be signed soon, and we'll get the payments out.
That's great.
So, yeah. And then the only other thing is just Earth Day. I just want everyone to be there. All of our vendor tables are filled, so it's going to be jam-packed with fun and lots of educational opportunities. So hope to see everybody there.
Awesome.
April 19th, noon to 4 at Switchyard Park.
Awesome, thank you, and thank you for all your help on the different grant applications that we had come through. I know there's a lot of, you know, sort of work that gets done behind the scenes to make sure that they're kind of ready to go for the legal and financial review and all of that, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us, where does that bring us? That brings us to member announcements. I'll ask in the room, but before I do that, Zero had asked me if I could make an announcement on his behalf since he couldn't be here today. He wanted to say, quote, Blue Bee is currently involved in installing an organic community gardening project at the South Knoll apartment complex in the Prospect Hill neighborhood for low-income tenants as a food as medicine, mental and physical health care program. End quote. Anyone else?
Can I go, I'm going back to the Earth Day thing.
Mhm.
I was gonna use the priorities that we outlined in our last meeting. They should be in the agenda packet from our last meeting, unless anybody has a problem with me using those for the Earth Day event for the board that I'll put up. Okay, I just wanted
Yeah,
to make sure I got verbal approval from the group.
Mhm. Yep.
Good information or handouts or anything? Or-
I'm gonna follow up with Sean to get some of the stuff that some of the grants that ESD does, and then I'm gonna have some contact information for people to apply. This was at the beginning, maybe you weren't here yet, to apply to be on the commission, come to a meeting, or partner with us for one of your grants.
Cool, awesome.
Awesome. Any other member announcements? Or new business? All right, and we're gonna get out of here early. We'll adjourn at 7:21 PM. Our next meeting is at May 13th at 6 PM in this room. Thanks, everybody.